101 debate. Today's topic is a big one. Should colleges eliminate standardized testing completely? In this debate, our pro team, Arianna Perez and Fahed Alsakka, will argue in favor of eliminating standardized testing, while our con team, Kristen Jasper and Peyton Harris, will argue against removing them. With me as your moderator, each side will present their strongest points, respond to challenges, and make their case. So without further ado, let's get started, and don't forget to like, subscribe.
My name's Arianna Perez. I'm a senior from Massachusetts, and I like to be a pediatric mental health specialist. And I am on the pro side for keeping standardized testing such as SAT and ACT.
My name's Fahed. I live in Pennsylvania. I just moved here from Idaho. I am a current sophomore, and I don't know what I want to do yet. And on pro side, that is, I want to keep the SAT and ACT in college admissions.
Hi, my name is Peyton Harris. I am on the con side that colleges should eliminate SAT and ACT. I am a junior and I want to be a pediatrician.
Hi, my name is Kristen Jasper. I'm in Washington State right now. I am a junior this year, and I am representing the side against the SAT and ACT in college applications. Thank you.
All right. Fahed, you can go ahead and go first. Please give your opening statements.
Thank you. Standardized testing means every student, regardless of their school, neighborhood, or social economic background, takes the same test under the same conditions. This creates a uniform measure, and without a consistent standard, college admissions lean heavily on GPA, which can vary dramatically by school and access to resources. Standardized tests restore fairness by giving every student one shared benchmark. GPAs are not consistent. A 4.0 at one school is not equal to a 4.0 at another. Some schools inflate grades, others grade harshly. Colleges need to account for this, which is why standardized tests are one of the few tools that allow college admissions to compare students across the world, which each of that school has drastically different course rigor and grading systems.
Arianna, would you like to give your opening statement?
The SAT and the ACT serve as useful tools for building a strong and well-rounded foundation. I'd like to highlight that there are 70% of students in poverty who are unable to make what we would consider today as a well-rounded college application due to financial strife and hurdles getting to and from different curricular activities. So that leaves 70% who may need the SAT and ACT to assist them in building a fully well-rounded college application. It's a necessity, in my opinion, for those to have the option to do so. And I'd also like to add on to that through high SAT, ACT scores, opportunities such as the National Scholarship Corporation will provide around $50 million yearly in funding to support students who may need that financial help. So in my opinion, I would like to argue that SAT, ACT scores are crucial to have as an option for students.
Kristen, would you like to give your opening statement? And also, thank you, pro side.
I am against colleges requiring the SAT and ACT in their application because it's just not a reliable way to measure someone's intelligence or ability to learn. And I think that makes someone incredibly anxious and they're most likely to make mistakes. I think that the GPA is able to show you years of what someone has done, rather than just that one time period or that one day.
Peyton, would you like to give your opening statement?
Yes, standardized tests like the SAT and ACT have been central to college admissions for decades, but they no longer serve the purpose they were designed for. Instead of measuring true academic ability or college potential, these tests often reflect a student's access to resources, family income, and test prep opportunities. As a result, they unfairly advantage some students while placing others at a significant disadvantage. Therefore, eliminating standardized testing would create a fair admissions process that values genuine achievement and potential, not just a performance on a single exam on a random Saturday.
Yes, it does. According to the National Bureau of Economics, standardized testing at SAT and ACT are 4 times more predictive of college GPA compared to high school GPA. These statistic tells us that, it's evident that the SAT scores do measure some sort of critical analytical skills and to what high schoolers have learned, and then how they can apply that in real questions that mimic college settings.
That was a good response. Thank you, pro side. Con side, are you ready to answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The question was, do standardized tests accurately measure student learning? Obviously, my side is no. I think that test scores from one day for only a few hours of that day are not an accurate prediction. I also think that the tests have a narrow definition of intelligence. They can only measure verbal reasoning or mathematical skills rather than creativity, leadership, or other real-world skills. I've been going to college fairs recently, and when I've talked with people from universities, they've said that they try to notice if someone does a rigorous course path, like if someone takes AP classes or college classes, rather than someone who takes a lot of tests. That's all for me. Thank you.
To argue that SAT and ACT testing does not measure real-world skills, I believe that was terminology. I like to argue that it in fact does teach it. Not only does it measure what you've done so far and how far you've come from at first not being able to do so in a time test. However, the test teaches time management skills. For example, when you're testing, yes, you have an allotted amount of time in which you have to get a certain amount of things done. However, I like to include the fact that that teaches career readiness for deadlines and managing a workload. Furthermore, you are taught discipline as you prep for the test because you are consistently practicing and being able to make a healthy list of priorities, not just for a test, but for careers and personal affairs as well. Furthermore, comprehension. Understanding complex information on these tests is essential for life. Maybe not just because it's from this one test, but they use complex language on purpose. Not to trick you up, not to mess you up there. It's so we can assess how ready you are for things that might come later on in life, such as understanding medical information or reading your workplace policy list. I'd also like to add in that there are resources for people that struggle to test, such as school counselors before you even get there, official accommodations from College Board for the SAT, and evidence-based relaxation techniques such as deep breaths. And I'd also like to go back to official accommodations that allots for more breaks, extended time, and any other 504 IEP accommodations that may be available for your school.
Onside, would you like to respond to that?
So I would like to take this one. So I'd like to respond to your argument or your rebuttal about the disability accommodations. I'm a disabled person and I have a type of disability where it's sudden. And I do sign up for College Board accommodations, but it just doesn't work well for me because I can't tell a week, a day, an hour, or even 10 minutes before I'm going to have an issue. And these tests are on a timeline. Like instead of So I'm offered, instead of a 4-hour test, it gets extended 1.5 times, so a 6-hour test. But I'm not supposed to be sitting for 6 hours, and getting up to treat my my episode, let's call it, is going to take a significant amount of time, sometimes up to 2 hours before I'm back to a normal level. I'd also like to mention that when I'm not at a normal level, I have cognitive impairments, and I struggle with connecting my thoughts or following a line of reasoning when I'm having an episode. And this causes me to miss the test or part of the test. And I just don't think it's a great idea to have these required tests when some people cannot physically sit there for a test.
Thank you for that. Fahed, would you like to respond?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I just wanted to go back to what Kristen said before, that GPA, college looking at a specific student's GPA rather than just a test score is more like your performance over a couple years, the 4 years of the standard high school is more predictive of what it could be. That's why colleges use the SAT and ACT scores in tandem with the extracurriculars and essays and the more holistic views and not just solely based. And to say that it benefits the wealthier students, I feel like that extracurriculars and schools that have AP access and teacher leniency are far more tied to income than standardized tests. There are many free online preps available now, especially Khan Academy and Blue Book. Khan Academy is free and online, and it teaches and it has specific tests, and it's affiliated with College Board, so it does match it.
Okay. Peyton, would you like to respond?
Yes. There has shown to be kind of a wealth gap from test scores. A University of Indianapolis article showed that it said that an unsatisfactory test score should not determine a student's level of college readiness or eligibility to go to an elite college, especially when considering the test scores of students with different socioeconomic statuses. Therefore, students from wealth tutors multiple test attempts, and scores reflect access to resources, not supposedly intelligence or potential. Academy and other access to free resources now. There hasn't always been, and this is more of a recent thing. So, yeah.
Pro side, when you are ready, please speak.
So, to argue that, well, the question is that, is the stress caused by standardized testing harmful, or is it good preparation for the real world? I believe that it's scientifically a fact that good stress is good for you. Stress is what wakes us up in the morning. Stress is what tells us, okay, we need to stop doing this so we can go do that. Stress is a necessity. Is it also argued that there is such a thing as bad stress? Yes, that's what we associate with stress. But to argue that, I like to argue again, as I stated before, that there are accommodations for people that have test anxiety to the point where it's no longer good stress for them. And many students become discouraged and experience feelings of hopelessness when they are out of options to strengthen a college application. That is another form of stress. The SAT, ACT as an option to have in case that they are in that situation where they have nothing else is also a remedy for that stress, who may need that last opportunity. So I believe that the testing itself is not the perpetrator of all bad stress when it comes to the college application.
Thank you, pro side, and now the con side.
So arguing that standardized test stress, quote unquote, prepares students for college is flawed because Stress from a single high-stakes exam is not the same as the real academic challenges students face in college. Test stress is artificial, unproductive, and often driven by fear rather than learning.
That there's already a realistic alternative for standardized testing, the fact that it is test optional. Over 2,000 schools now are test optional for SAT ACTs. So I believe that that is a fair enough alternative, because at the end of the day, if there's 2,000 schools that are offering it as an option, I don't think it would be fair to say that no one can take the test because a few people cannot. And I'm not saying that people with disabilities or that are tough test takers should not be able to take these tests. However, there are resources available to support them as much as possible. And in that same breath, I think that applicants should be able to know themselves. If they know that they will test well using an SAT, ACT, and it will strengthen their college application, they should absolutely go for it. But if someone knows that maybe testing isn't their strength, then there are other holistic ways to get yourself into college. And I don't believe that many colleges nowadays are dependent on the singular test.
Fahed, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Arianna was saying. I feel like that if you don't create a standardized measure to which you test, to which you evaluate students across the board, it leaves it susceptible to human bias and human favor, which I would argue is way worse. As well as I just wanted to add on to what Kirsten said previously, that the stress, or I'm sorry, I think it was Peyton that said it, but the stress does not mimic college at all. I feel like that tests like midterms, finals, even the driver's test, it's all standardized. It's all within that realm of it can cause stress. Now, did you prepare for it? Did you take it? That's just a matter of will it be shown on the test, you know?
Kristen, you have your hand raised? Would you like to respond?
So I mentioned earlier that I was talking with I believe an advocate from a university. I think that's what you would call them, or like you might call them an admissions counselor. I think that's something. They mentioned that at their college they look for a regular rigorous coursework. So if you were doing Running Start or you were taking the AP classes over the tests, because those things can prove that the person isn't going to be overwhelmed or drop out, which is something that the universities worry about because they don't want a high dropout rate. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other alternatives as well to standardized testing. And I would like to do a little disclaimer. I am taking this test. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying that these colleges should not require it from everyone. My family is in a position that I can't take it, but that's not going to give me an advantage over, or it shouldn't give me an advantage over a student who wasn't able to take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Peyton, would you like to answer the question? Are there realistic alternatives to standardized testing?
Yes, I think that colleges can just look at a more holistic interpretation of a student's application, which is very realistic because you just stop looking at test scores. So focusing on real academic work like GPA, course rigor, essays, projects, and long-term performance would just make academic standards become more meaningful and not enable students to just cram for a test. So then it shows that they have more of quote unquote what it takes to qualify to apply to college, basically.
Thank you both sides for answering the question. We'll move on to the second question.
Standardized tests create a more equal admissions process because they are the only component measured in the same way for the student across the board, that is across the nation, if not international. This regardless of school quality, grading, leniency, or available to AP classes. GPA heavily depends on a school's resource and teacher's judgment, which again is susceptible to bias. Extracurriculars depend on family income and free time, which not every student can have. A common exam removes those advantages by giving every student the same questions under the same conditions. There are free PEP tools such as Khan Academy and Blue Book, further reduced cost barriers for people with a lower social economic room. When colleges rely less on subjective factors and more on a uniform measure of reasoning and reading ability, students from underfunded schools finally have a way to demonstrate their academic potential on equal footing.
To add on to that, that the SAT and the ACT, they aren't so much as who can cram more and who can think of the answer faster. Well, I mean, in a way, that second part, yes. However, to take a quote from the College Board, the cognitively complex thinking required by the select digital SAT suite questions of 2024, that's a long title. The SAT requires cognitively complex thinking, including analysis, synthesis, and evaluation rather than simple recall of facts. This grants students the opportunity to display a skill set beyond memorizing information. So how does that relate to this? It's not so much the inequality of who had more resources to prep, because truth is, even when we are in school, if we have this amazing private tutor we paid $1 million for, that would be great. And I don't know where I'm going with that. However, I don't think that there's an inequality to this type of test because it's not so much who knows more. It's just who can solve it and think of it differently, which is a form of creative thinking and problem solving.
Thank you, Prosai. Kansai, would you like to respond?
Start. Standardized tests don't create equality, they expose the inequality. They reward students with more resources, more prep, and more time while leaving behind students who may just be as capable but lack financial advantages. And though there are equal questions, everybody has the exact same questions. Equal test questions do not equal the same opportunity. Like I said, prep access, school quality, or family income all influence these scores. And the playing field is already uneven before the test even starts.
Thank you, Peyton. Kristen, would you like to respond to the question?
Well, I was just going to add in that I agree with Peyton, and I also have talked a lot about financial inequality, and I believed that my opposers have also responded with some good points to that as well. Thank you.
Arianna, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, are we able to go back to that really quick?
Sure.
All right. I just want to add one more thing. Going back to one of my facts from the U.S. Census Bureau of 2020, that was the last census done. So that's the most recent information we have about the 70% of students in poverty who cannot partake in extracurricular activities due to financial strife and unreliable and unsafe transportation. This relates to this question because you're right, there isn't a fair playing field right now for SAT, ACTs. If we were just to think about, well, they don't have access to this test. But it's also unfair and not equal as much to the students who may not have the finances just to get to and from their extracurricular activities, who may not have the prep to write a good essay for college, which is why people that are that function differently in their brains, that may be good enough, that may be able to take a test, this test should not be completely taken away from them. It should be a tool, because the SAT, ACT is a way to fully round and fully shape what an applicant is. So from their, thinking of the word, from their extracurriculars to how they do well in school to how they test on one day. It's all very useful for colleges to evaluate a student and their capabilities across the board.
I don't think teachers should have more control over students' evaluation. I think that with greater teacher control increases flexibility, which it does, but it reduces the fairness. Teacher graded work varies by school resource, grading styles, and it implements a bias. Teachers can favor multiple students of a specific social economic background, of a certain race, of a certain who, and standardized measures provide a consistent baseline so students aren't rewarded or penalized based on which school that they attend.
Thank you. Would anyone like to answer the question next?
When I was researching my topic, I came across this interesting idea that relates to this question, and it is that high school classes tend to teach this test, so eliminating these tests would encourage more educational innovation. I don't know what state tests you guys might have, but I know that here in Washington we have the WACOS and the SBACs, and I know that for like the last month or two of the school year, high school and middle school, they're teaching you how to take the test, what would be on the test, how to answer the questions on the test, and how, and they do the same thing for the AP tests. I noticed when I was taking them the last 2 years, and it shows that people are preparing for the test rather than actually learning, I guess, or preparing for the high school. They have like the pre-SAT, which is more important, which is more of a deal than the SAT. So I know that they're like teaching people how to do that rather than teaching people the information, I guess. I'm not sure I'm getting this across well enough. Thank you.
Yeah, adding on to Kristen, therefore, with this, teachers should have more control over student evaluation because it would reflect a more accurate evaluation than just a test. And like Kristen said, it would allow not just curriculum that teaches to a test, but it would help students' applications reflect them based on effort, growth, creativity, participation, and their improvement over time that teachers have seen for themselves instead of what a test sees over right and wrong answers.
Okay.
All right, so let me go back to that question. Thinking about it, I didn't fully understand the question at first, but I believe that like these SAT and ACTs, as Fahed said, they are standard. It doesn't matter who is more favorable in the eyes of a teacher because it's just, you're right versus wrong answers. But the way that these questions are set up, they aren't so much as a who knows more, who rehearsed their answer better. It's not a test of knowledge. It's more so a test of, well, yes, knowledge of how long you've been in school, but also analytical and problem solving. So I think that these tests, I'm going to end it. I'm going to recant everything I just said and leave it at analytical and problem solving.
Thank you, Arianna. Fahed, you can go ahead and respond. I saw you had your hand raised. You can go ahead and speak now.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what the con side said. They said that teachers teach for the test. And I feel like that having the teachers teach for the test says the bar. Test says, here's where the basic is. It's how you measure. Here's where the basic, here's where the advanced, here's where the below basic is. And having that, it says to, especially having that data to where which students are where at, and which technique is working among different schools. I think that is very resourceful to the teachers and the people that are prepping to teach the students. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Eliminating tests lowers standards. Without the objective benchmarks, schools rely on subjective grading and unequal coursework quality. The tests provide a uniform measure of reasoning and content mastery that keeps expectations consistent nationwide.
Thank you. Was that your full response?
Yeah, I always have a problem muting it. I don't know where my mouse goes.
Okay. I just want to make sure because I was like, oh, he's unmuted. Maybe he had something more to say and I just interrupted him. Okay. So does anyone else want to answer the question next?
Okay. I'd just, along with some of my research, anyways, test optional schools have reported that there is no decline in academic performance or graduation rates after dropping the tests. It looks like they've also reported that there's been an increase in applications and enrollments from first generation, low income, or minority students.
Yeah, you can go ahead and respond next, either of you.
So yes, eliminating tests would raise academic standards because colleges would rely on deeper, more meaningful academic measures instead of the standardized test with the SAT or ACT. Without test scores, admissions focuses more on GPA over multiple years, rigor coursework with AP, IB, honors, or dual enrollment courses, essays and writing skills, long-term projects and portfolios, and teacher recommendations that all require real academic effort, not just one day of performance. And students must demonstrate constant achievement with these, not just, as I said, one day.
Thank you, Peyton. Arianna, would you like to answer the question next? Would eliminating tests raise or lower academic standards?
I think that Fahed phrased what I was going to say pretty much to the entirety.
Pro side, you can go ahead and begin with your opening statement. Fahed, would you like to begin us off?
I would. The clear benchmark, a standardized test ensures fairness. That's what we're all arguing for, right? Is fairness. Grades, extracurriculars, and opportunities vary widely based on income, social economic background, school funding, and teacher judgment. Standardized tests are the only part of a student's record that is identical for everyone. Same questions, same scoring, same expectations. Free prep resources remove cost barriers, and objective results give students from under-resourced schools a real chance to compete. Removing or minimizing these tests does not make admissions fairer. It makes success dependent even more on unequal circumstances. If the goal is equality, we need at least one consistent nationwide measure, and I believe that SAT and ACT provides that.
Thank you for that very factual closing statement, Fahed. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Arianna from Pro Side. Please give your closing statement.
These tests shouldn't ever be able to replace a holistic view from an essay or from teacher recommendations and even just extracurricular activities. Those are all very important achievements that a student can do during their high school career, which should be recognized. And in that same breath, these SAT, ACT scores and tests they really should just serve as another tool, as something to strengthen a student's application. Therefore, whether or not they choose to take it, because as previously stated, over 2,000 schools are test optional, that should be up to the student to decide whether or not they should apply that to their application, and if it would help them or not. I think that should be left up to the student, not to just the fact that we wouldn't have it available if it was completely gone.
Thank you. I just wanted to sum up some of the things I've mentioned. I said that standardized tests reinforce inequality socio-economically, I said that these tests are not great predictors of long-term college success. I said that they have a very narrow definition of intelligence. And just because you get a low score doesn't mean that you aren't smart. I've mentioned that these students become these multi-million companies, or like Blue Book or college, these students become customers of them, and that colleges don't need these scores from these tests to choose students. But I would recommend you still take it, and for other standardized tests, like maybe the MCAT, I think maybe those should still be required for medical school. But for entry-level college, I don't think they're necessary at all. That's it. Thank you.
Kristen Jasper. Peyton, you can go ahead and begin your closing statement.
Thank you. Standardized testing is outdated, inequitable, and ultimately ineffective in measuring a student's true potential. These tests were created for a different era, one where access to education, tutoring, and academic resources was far more limited and unequal. Today, we know that a single exam cannot capture the complexity of a student's abilities, creativity, work ethic, or drive. Instead, standardized tests often reinforce existing inequalities by rewarding those with more time, money, and support to prepare. By eliminating standardized testing, colleges can shift toward admissions practices that evaluate students more fairly and accurately. A test-free system encourages schools to look at meaningful indicators of success such as GPA, coursework difficulty, personal achievements, and contributions to their communities. These factors provide a more complete picture of who a student is and what they can bring to a college campus.
Thank you, Peyton. Thank you, everyone, both sides, for giving their closing statements. This concludes this debate and thoughtful discussion. Today, we explored both sides of the question, should schools eliminate standardized testing? And thank you to our audience for joining us. Debaters, so thank you to all four debaters for a clear, respectful, great job, everyone, and I hope to see you all in future videos.